Mom, there's a man pointing a gun at me. Her voice was steady, too steady. That's what terrified me the most. Don't worry, I've got it under control, she said. But you might want to head home. Unless you want this guy to make the evening news. I left everything behind, walked out of the conference room, mid-sentence, ignoring the stunned faces around me. We'd only been living in Maple Hollow for 2 weeks. Who would have thought the so-called neighborhood watch would greet us by aiming a firearm at my daughter? They picked the wrong house, and more importantly, they had no idea who they were dealing with. And if your HOA's ever gone off the rails, drop your story in the comments. What kind of nonsense have they pulled on you? I never imagined I'd end up in a situation like this. 20 years of marriage. A surprisingly peaceful divorce, and finally, I'd bought my dream home, something I'd worked toward for years. Maple Hollow seemed perfect. Quiet, safe, beautiful. The brochures promised tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, and secure living. What they should have said was, "Welcome to a neighborhood ruled by clipboard tyrants with delusions of power." Let me rewind and show you how it all began. I'm Erica Daniels, 45, a consumer rights attorney based in Chicago. After the divorce, I wanted peace and a clean slate. Maple Hollow checked every box. Charming colonial houses, perfect lawns, polite smiles at the open house. The realtor did mention the homeowners association was very involved. I'd lived under HOA rules before. I thought, how bad could it really be? Spoiler, far worse than I could have imagined. On the first day, while I was still arranging furniture, the doorbell rang. Standing outside was a tightly wound woman in her 50s, holding a binder the size of a brick. "Welcome to Maple Hollow, Ms. Daniels," she said curtly. "I'm Judith Crenshaw, the HOA secretary." She handed me the binder like it was a live grenade. "This is your welcome packet. Please read through it carefully, so we don't have any incidents." The way she said incidents made it sound like breaking a rule would land me in the town square stocks. I thanked her, watching as she glanced around nervously before hurrying to her car. Weird behavior. I chalked it up to anxiety or control issues, but that night, I opened the binder, and my attorney instincts went straight into red alert. Don't. No. Street parking from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. not even for guests. No gatherings of more than 8 people without prior written approval. Mandatory attendance at HOA meetings, and the fines. Minimum $50, doubling with each offense. By the time I hit page 20, I was starting to wonder if I'd moved into a suburban cult with manicured lawns. "Mom, there's a man pointing a gun at me." Her voice was steady, too steady. That's what terrified me the most. "Don't worry, I've got it under control," she said. "But you might want to head home. Unless you want this guy to make the evening news." I left everything behind, walked out of the conference room, mid-sentence, ignoring the stunned faces around me. We'd only been living in Maple Hollow for 2 weeks. Who would have thought the so-called neighborhood watch would greet us by aiming a firearm at my daughter? They picked the wrong house, and more importantly, they had no idea who they were dealing with. And if your HOA's ever gone off the rails, drop your story in the comments. What kind of nonsense have they pulled on you? I never imagined I'd end up in a situation like this. 20 years of marriage. A surprisingly peaceful divorce, and finally, I'd bought my dream home, something I'd worked toward for years. Maple Hollow seemed perfect. Quiet, safe, beautiful. The brochures promised tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, and secure living. What they should have said was, "Welcome to a neighborhood ruled by clipboard tyrants with delusions of power." Let me rewind and show you how it all began. I'm Erica Daniels, 45, a consumer rights attorney based in Chicago. After the divorce, I wanted peace and a clean slate. Maple Hollow checked every box. Charming colonial houses, perfect lawns, polite smiles at the open house. The realtor did mention the homeowners association was very involved. I'd lived under HOA rules before. I thought, how bad could it really be? Spoiler, far worse than I could have imagined. On the first day, while I was still arranging furniture, the doorbell rang. Standing outside was a tightly wound woman in her 50s, holding a binder the size of a brick. "Welcome to Maple Hollow, Ms. Daniels," she said curtly. "I'm Judith Crenshaw, the HOA secretary." She handed me the binder like it was a live grenade. "This is your welcome packet. Please read through it carefully, so we don't have any incidents." The way she said incidents made it sound like breaking a rule would land me in the town square stocks. I thanked her, watching as she glanced around nervously before hurrying to her car. Weird behavior. I chalked it up to anxiety or control issues, but that night, I opened the binder. And my attorney instincts went straight into red alert, don't. No, street parking from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. not even for guests. No gatherings of more than 8 people without prior written approval. Mandatory attendance at HOA meetings, and the fines. Minimum $50, doubling with each offense by the time I hit page 20. I was starting to wonder if I'd moved into a suburban cult with manicured lawns. Did he just imply he'd use a weapon? Over a parking violation, Lena asked quietly, already pulling out her phone to snap photos of the red X scorched into our lawn. Mom, she said, eyes narrowing, I think I'm going to extend my stay. This just got interesting. There was something in her voice, not fear, but that laser-focused curiosity I'd seen before, the kind she got when she knew a puzzle had landed in her lap and she was the exact person to solve it. I don't know what that red X means. I told her, staring at the paint, but I'm pretty sure we've just been labeled troublemakers. Lena's small smile didn't reassure me. It was quiet, and far too confident. No, Mom, she said. They just marked themselves as bullies who picked the wrong house to mess with. The next evening, we arrived at the Maple Hollow Community Center for the HOA meeting. Nearly 40 residents were already seated on folding chairs. At the front stood Marvin Drake, tall, silver-haired and postured like a man addicted to authority. Standing beside him was Cliff Reynolds, the same man who spray-painted our lawn. Behind a table near the front sat Karen Wallace, head buried in paperwork. She didn't look up when we walked in. Voices dropped to whispers. Then Marvin clapped his hands once and called the meeting to order. Before we begin, he said with a rehearsed smile, let's welcome our newest resident, Erica Daniels. All eyes turned to me. Double quotes, Mrs. Daniels has already shared her unique views on our community standards. A few people gave awkward laughs. Most remained silent. For the next 45 minutes, I watched Marvin and Cliff run the meeting like petty dictators. Anyone who questioned rising landscaping fees was cut off with vague talk of community beautification. When a man Michael Garcia raised a concern about tripled security costs, Marvin shut him down. We've covered this, Michael. Recent events in the region require proactive safety measures. No specifics, no discussion. No follow-up allowed. People glanced at each other, but no one spoke. The fear in the room was thick and real. When the financial report ended, I raised my hand. Marvin ignored it, scanning every other direction until mine was the only one left up. Double quotes, yes. Mrs. Daniels, he said finally, his tone dripping with annoyance. I have several legal questions. I began steadily, specifically regarding your enforcement protocols. For example, the clause that allows HOA reps to enter private property for compliance inspections. I paused. That's a direct violation of state property laws unless explicit consent is outlined in the original deed. The room fell dead, silent, and your fine structure, I continued, exceeds the limits allowed by statute 27 to 45.3 under state HOA governance law. Marvin's face flushed, his grip tightened on the podium. Double quotes, Mrs. Daniels, we appreciate your legal insights, he said coldly. But our covenant was built with top HOA legal advisors. These matters were resolved long before your arrival. His smile was thin and sharp. Maybe if you'd read your welcome packet as thoroughly as you researched loopholes, you'd know that buying here meant accepting our governance structure. Next time, perhaps do more homework before purchasing. The condescension burned, but years of courtroom sparring had taught me never to flinch when an opponent tried to land a blow. As the meeting ended, Karen brushed past me and subtly slipped a folded paper into my hand. Outside, I unfolded it. Careful. Cameras and mics in common areas. They're watching. Before I could process that, Cliff's shoulder checked me as he passed, nearly knocking me off balance. We know how to deal with people like you, he muttered low. Ask the Johnsons why they sold so fast last year. Then he walked off to the same car that had sat outside my house the night before. When I got home, Lena was deep in conversation with Nancy Aldridgeware, outspoken neighbor and a man I didn't recognize. Mom, she said, eyes gleaming with excitement, meet our resistance. She gestured to the man. This is Michael Garcia, the same one who called out the security spending. Michael gave me a firm nod. I've got footage you need to see. Before he could elaborate, my phone buzzed with a new email. The subject line made my stomach drop. Serious violation, $500. Fine, I read aloud. Unauthorized gathering. You've got to be kidding me, I said. They're calling this meeting in our living room a violation. Michael sighed. Same thing happened to me last month. My brother and his kid stayed over. They hit me with an unregistered event fine. They do this on purpose, Nancy added. Pressure tactics. They scare people into silence. Most folks just pay to avoid drama, she said, sipping tea. But not you too, huh? Lena gave her a sly grin, the kind she wore right before busting an international fraud ring 3 years ago. Michael's been documenting everything, she said. Show her. Michael opened his laptop. Video clips began to play footage from his home security cams. Marvin and Cliff accepting cash from a contractor, Cliff selectively issuing violation notices to residents who'd questioned board decisions. And most disturbing, Marvin and a man in a suit reviewing a list of houses. Mine was on it. They're targeting properties, Michael explained. They want to force people out. Once the rezoning goes through across the highway, land here skyrockets. They're predators, I said quietly, anger rising in my chest, using HOA rules as weapons. Kicking people out, flipping homes for profit. Nancy nodded and pulled a small notebook from her purse. I'm a retired investigative journalist, she said. Been documenting this for 3 years. Since Marvin took over, 26 families have been forced out, harassment, fines, sabotage. Every single house bought up by a shell company linked to Marvin's brother-in-law's firm. Lena leaned over Michael's laptop, studying footage like it was evidence at a federal trial. Look at the escalation pattern, she said. Starts with small fines. Then nonsense violations. Then home issues, plumbing, power, water, and finally, intimidation. She froze a frame. Marvin taking cash, zoomed in on his face. That's not just greed, she said. That's control. He likes this. Nancy agreed. I've interviewed people like him my whole career. They get off on unchecked authority. The HOA system is perfect for them, Michael added. No oversight. Broad power. And homeowners can't just walk away without losing everything. He looked at me. Last week, I recorded Marvin telling Cliff to target your house next. He said, and I quote, "She's gonna be a problem. We'll handle it." So I'd been a target from the start. I felt the chill of realization, and then the burn of righteous fury. They thought they could bully me, but they didn't know they were up against a consumer rights attorney and an FBI tactical commander. The next morning, I filed a formal complaint with the City Housing Authority. By that afternoon, our water was shut off. Cliff didn't even try to hide his smirk when Erica confronted him about the water shut-off. Emergency maintenance on your section of the line, he said casually. Should be back in 6 hours or so. HOA regulations permit infrastructure maintenance at our discretion. He gave her a pointed look. Maybe keep a few bottles of water handy next time you decide to file complaints. From the front porch, Lena stood watching, expression unreadable, but her eyes sharp and calculating. That evening, while Erica was busy on a video call with her legal team, Lena quietly installed covert security cameras around the property. She used surveillance gear from her FBI field kit, standard issue. Nothing that would jeopardize any ongoing investigations. That night, Cliff's car was back across the street, headlights off but flashlight flickering against their windows every few minutes. Classic intimidation. Lena explained without a hint of concern. They're testing thresholds, trying to make us uneasy enough to comply or leave. It's how cowards play at power. She was typing as she spoke. Karen, the HOA secretary, just texted me. Wants to meet tomorrow. Riverdale Coffee, noon. Says she has information. Her smile was cold and confident. We may have just recruited an insider. Erica couldn't sleep. She stared through her window, watching the faint beam of Cliff's flashlight sweep across their lawn, still marred by that gaudy red X. But what had started as vandalism was now a symbol of resistance. She thought about the 26 families Nancy had mentioned. 26 households pushed out through threats, fines, harassment. Also, Marvin Drake could keep building his empire. But this time, he had overplayed his hand. He didn't know the woman in that house had taken on billion-dollar companies in court and won. He didn't know her daughter once breached a terrorist safe house with nothing but a sidearm and calm nerves. He had picked the wrong fight. Riverdale Coffee was busy enough to blend in but quiet enough to talk. Lena arrived early, claiming a corner seat with a view of both exits. Muscle memory from years in the field. Karen showed up on time, glancing nervously over her shoulder before sliding into the seat. Thank you for meeting me, she whispered. What I'm about to tell you. It could cost me everything. Lena leaned in, steady and calm. Take your time. We appreciate whatever you're willing to share. Karen pulled a USB drive from her purse and pushed it across the table. I've been tracking inconsistencies in the HOA's financials for over 2 years, she said. Marvin thinks I'm just the secretary. He doesn't know I used to be a forensic accountant. She swallowed hard. There's $500,000 missing, funneled through fake maintenance companies that trace back to LLCs tied to Marvin's brother. Her hands trembled as she went on. My mom lived here before me. Marvin and Cliff made her life miserable. Anonymous calls, vandalism, water damage that never showed up on their own surveillance. She ended up selling for 30% under market to a company Marvin's family owns. I took this job to get proof. Back at home, Erica was reviewing their HOA bill when something new jumped out. Enhanced security assessment, $200 month. She called the HOA office. It's a special assessment, the voice said, due to increasing security concerns in the neighborhood. No vote had been held. No discussion. Nothing had been said at the last meeting. Erica was halfway through drafting a formal legal complaint when Lena returned. They're targeting your property specifically, Lena said, placing new documents on the kitchen table. Karen pulled this from internal files. Your house is one of 5 needed to complete a development block for their rezoning application. She showed her mother a map, 2 properties left unclaimed. The Daniels and the Garcias. Nearly 30% of homes in Maple Hollow were now owned by anonymous LLCs, all traced back to Marvin's in-laws. This isn't just HOA corruption, Lena said, it's organized real estate fraud. That night, Lena called an old colleague at the bureau, agent Thomas Davis. She requested background checks on both Marvin Drake and Cliff Reynolds. Before the results even came back, Erica discovered her car had been tagged in silver spray paint, comply or leave. They documented it all, adding the incident to their ever-growing evidence folder. Agent Davis called the next morning. Marvin Drake had been forced out of law enforcement after multiple excessive force complaints and an internal investigation for evidence tampering. Charges were dropped under shady circumstances. Cliff Reynolds, no valid security credentials. His carry permit had been revoked years ago after threatening someone in a supermarket parking lot. Worse, Davis said. There was already an active FBI investigation into suspected money laundering through multiple HOAs in the county, including Maple Hollow. Erica had just hung up when Lena received a text. Emergency. Cliff's at my door. Armed. Lena grabbed her keys instantly. Stay here. Call 911. Tell them it's a potential armed standoff so they prioritize it. She was gone before Erica could speak. Focused, calm, professional, Erica's hands shook as she dialed. The dispatcher confirmed a unit was en route, but, due to a highway pileup, ETA was 15 minutes. 15 minutes. A lifetime when a gun is involved. 6 minutes later, Erica couldn't wait. She ran the 3 doors down to Michael Garcia's house. Cliff stood on the porch, hand on his holstered weapon, shouting and pointing at Michael's security cameras. Lena, calm as ever, was between them. Casual in stance, focused in her eyes. You're violating HOA privacy codes. Cliff bellowed. Recording common areas is unauthorized. Take them down or you'll be fined $100 a day. Michael replied calmly. The cameras are on my property, facing my property. That's legal under state law, Cliff snarled. The HOA disagrees. Section 12 covers landscaping. Lena interrupted coldly. There's no restriction on cameras on private property. Cliff's hand inched toward his holster. Who are you again? Lena Daniels, a guest of the homeowner. And yes, it concerns me. Because you're threatening a resident without legal authority. He snapped. Cliff drew the gun and raised it, waving it between them. You people don't get it. I am security. You don't obey, you get shut down. Lena didn't flinch. Finger on the trigger already. Classic rookie mistake. Cliff's rage boiled over. He pointed the weapon skyward and fired a warning shot. What happened next was a blur. Lena lunged. One hand locked Cliff's wrist. The other twisted his elbow. The gun hit the porch with a metallic clatter. She drove him down fast, pinning his arm behind his back and forcing him face down with one knee in his back. Michael, she said calmly, use your shirt. Pick up the gun by the grip reserve prints. Michael did as told, still in shock. Lena, Erica called, breathless. Perfect timing, Lena said. Let the officers know we've got an armed suspect in custody. Police arrived minutes later. When Lena showed her credentials, their tone changed instantly. Respectful. Focused. This man fired a weapon in a residential zone and threatened civilians, she explained. The officer nodded. We'll take it from here. As Cliff was cuffed and led to the cruiser, a black sedan screeched to a halt nearby. Marvin Drake jumped out. What is going on? Cliff works for METHA, HOA. This is a misunderstanding. The lead officer stepped into Marvin Drake's path with a hand up. Sir, stand back. The individual discharged a firearm during a hostile confrontation and is being arrested on multiple weapons, violations, and assault charges. Marvin's face turned crimson with disbelief and fury. This is absurd. You can't arrest my security officer for doing his job. His gaze scanned the group lingering on Erica, then Lena, then Michael. I'll have your badges for this harassment, he growled. The officer didn't even flinch. Unless you'd like to be arrested for obstructing law enforcement, he said flatly, I suggest you take a step back. As Cliff was loaded into the patrol car and driven away, Marvin brushed past Lena, muttering under his breath, You've made a serious mistake. You don't know who we are, or what we're capable of. Lena's smile didn't waver. Funny, she replied coolly. That's exactly what I was about to say to you. The next morning, retaliation came fast. Erica opened the mailbox to find it stuffed with 17 separate violation notices, each absurd in its own. Right and authorized landscaping changes, which included the red X Cliff had painted, surveillance equipment, their legal security cameras, and even a citation for an improperly positioned welcome mat. Each violation carried a minimum fine of $100. That night, someone tore through their flower beds, ripping plants from the soil and scattering them across the lawn like trophies of vandalism. The security footage caught two teenagers in hoodies, faces covered, carefully avoiding direct shots of their features. The message was clear. Marvin wasn't done. Cliff may have been arrested, but Marvin had others in his pocket. Meanwhile, Agent Thomas Davis called Lena with an update. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit has moved your HOA to the top of our case list, he said. We've been tracking several coordinated HOA fraud networks in your area. This one, Marvin's operation, looks like one piece in a much larger puzzle. But with the weapons charges now in play, the entire investigation just escalated. Karen continued passing along insider documents. One batch of records showed over $470,000 diverted from the HOA's reserves, funneled through shell maintenance companies, linked directly to Marvin's relatives. It wasn't just greed, it was embezzlement. Erica called for a meeting. This time, they met at a restaurant outside the HOA's surveillance bubble. 23 homeowners showed up, some nervous, some angry, all fed up. Story after story emerged about petty violations, surprise assessments, slashed tires, and mysterious plumbing issues. Anyone who questioned the board's actions had suffered in one form or another. That night, the Fair Homeowners Alliance was born. They drafted a formal petition demanding a special election to remove the current HOA board. They also began planning to notify local media and file a civil complaint. Karen, still acting as Marvin's loyal secretary, updated them via secure texts. Marvin knows something's happening, she warned. He's furious. He's losing control and he knows it.